Good afternoon, everyone. It's 1:30, so we'd like to call the meeting to order. Town Clerk, if you can do the roll call, please.
Commissioner Goldberg. Commissioner Peters.
Yes, I'm here by Zoom.
Thank you. Commissioner David.
Present.
Vice Mayor Stern.
Present.
Mayor Moore.
Present.
Town Manager Labadie.
Present.
And Town Attorney Rubin.
Present.
If we could all rise for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we have one proposed change for the agenda to move item 11C to just after item 10A, after the fire rescue implementation update. Are there any other changes?
I'm here.
Can we have a motion?
I move we approve the adjusted agenda. Second.
Everyone in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll move on to presentations and proclamations. And we do have a proclamation today about the Water Conservation Month proclamation. The Town of Highland Beach, Florida proclamation. We want to call up Pat to the, I'll read it and then I'll hand it over to you. Whereas water is a basic and essential need of every living creature, and whereas the state of Florida water management districts and the town of Highland Beach are working together to increase awareness about the importance of water conservation. And whereas the the town of Highland Beach and the state of Florida has designated April, typically a dry month, when the water demands are most acute. Florida's Water Conservation Month to educate citizens about how they can help save Florida's precious water resources. And whereas the town of Highland Beach has always encouraged and supported water conservation through various educational programs and special events. And whereas every business, industry, school, and citizen can make a difference when it comes to conserving water. And whereas every business, industry, school, and citizen can help by saving water and thus promote a healthy economy and community. And now, therefore, I, Natasha Moore, Mayor of the town of Highland Beach, on behalf of the Town Commission, do hereby proclaim the month of April as Water Conservation Month. So I'll present this to Pat Roman, our Public Works Director.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so the next item on the agenda, I've been looking forward to. I guess Skender is going to be the one to present it, and it is the presentation of the town sign entry signage finalists.
Okay, and Linelda, do we have it available to get up on the screen? All right.
Is there a drum roll anywhere? Oh, nice.
There we go. So here are our results for the entry signage design contest. Voting was open for 1 month and it closed on March 31st. Voting was open online through an email campaign we had sent out and in person, and those are our results. So congratulations to design number 1, and our artist is Barry Donaldson.
Excellent. Yay.
Hey.
So I just had a couple questions. So how many additional emails did you get as a result of the contest?
So since we launched the whole contest in August, we got 310 new emails, which was about a 20% growth over what we had, which is pretty huge. And then since we opened voting in February, we got 81 new emails.
Oh, excellent.
Mhm.
Excellent. So that was one of our goals, was to expand our reach through a project like this. So that's really great. And congratulations to Barry Donaldson to having the our winning design. And I'm really excited about that. So I guess the next steps are to
authorize me to get a landscape architect on board to start doing the renderings and the color takeoffs and then the associated landscape designs around the location size, so you guys can start fitting it the way you want. If you want any kind of minor changes, this or that, we will bring those to the commission. So I will go out. Skender will get us a landscape architect and we'll bring it back and start getting some designs and whatnot to you all, so you could take a look at it and get some cost estimates so we could see what we're looking at. Again, we probably over budgeted, but maybe not, depending on how the architect does it. Again, these have to be frangible, so have to break and stuff. So they're generally not as permanent as one would think. So we'll get a landscape architect in, get that drawn up, along with probably an architect too. They probably have to do it in combination, like a firm. And then we'll bring you some renderings and cost estimates to work from.
So do you need a motion now?
To authorize us to move forward with getting the consultant to start putting together designs for the winner design, for the winning design. Option 1, I guess.
I move that we authorize town manager Labradee to move forward with getting proposals to install the new sign.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Yeah.
Well, excellent. Thank you very much for doing the contest and seeing it through. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are there any public comments? Okay, state your name and where you live, please.
Todd Laris, 1108 Russell Drive. I just wanted to hand you guys out.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like to address the fire rescue, Highland Beach Fire Rescue issue. So I met with the finance director and I met with the fire chief on budgeting for the Highland Beach Fire Department. And one of the main reasons that we were putting together on fire department, from what I was told, was to save money and to make the city safer. And from what I see so far, I don't see that we're going to be saving money, and I don't see the city being safer. I did an analysis on personnel and staffing from what the fire chief has explained to me. And if you look at number one, okay, in the fire service, you have 3 different shifts. You have 3 24-hour shifts, right? So you have A, B, and C shift on a 24-hour shift, and then you have 2 days off. You have 48 hours off, okay? So then number 2, that would make you would work 122 shifts per year, which comes to about 2,928 working hours per year. If you base it on a 40-hour work week, 52 weeks a year, that calculates to 2,080 hours per week, per year of working. To avoid overtime, they have a deferral day called a Kelly Day, or it's like a deferral shift. So you work 6 shifts and you have a day off. Okay. So that goes to bring down overtime. So you're not working overtime, but that still comes to 2,496 hours per week. If the fire chief and the finance director told me that they're going to hire 24 people. So in number 5, it's I have it broken down as overtime. That means there would be 416 hours per year per position overtime per year. If you have 24 firefighters, that comes to 9,980 hours per year of overtime, which comes to just about $800,000 a year, plus a 32% benefit package, right? So that comes, so the budgeted amount was $3,658,000. Sick leave wasn't put in there, vacation time was not put in there, workers' comp wasn't in there, pension, healthcare. So if you calculate all that with 24 employees, that comes to $4,702,000. The finance director and the fire chief showed me the matrix of how many people they're going to hire, the 24 people. Now, I was just on the website the other day, and it showed me that now there's going to be a fire chief involved, assistant chief involved, and there's going to be administrative assistant involved. So this is going to be way, way closer to $5 million a year, just labor, just personnel, okay? And that is going to cost the city a lot more money. I have not even addressed the operations issue, because the finance director showed me it's going to cost 600 or just under $700,000 a year for operations. I haven't even looked at that stuff, because you're going from an operations budget of like $4 million a year to, he's saying 24, 25 to 600, just under $700,000 in operations. So the numbers don't make sense. And I haven't even looked at the operations numbers. So the point I'm getting at is like, this is not going to save the city money. It's going to cost the city more money. You're talking about locking 24 people into state pension plans that the city's going to pay for forever. And I had not even looked at operations issues. And the other thing is, the city is, if it's going to be safer, if all these units are out, if these 2 units are out on calls, there's no mutual aid agreement yet. There's nobody that's going to come in and back up the city if these 2 units, if a fire engine's on a fire alarm and a rescue unit is on a medical call, there is no agreement yet with anybody to back up the city. So the 2 issues that are going to make the city safer, it's not going to be safer, and we're not going to save money. It's going to cost the city more money. So if you have any questions, I live in 1108 Russell Drive.
Any other public comments? Okay, moving on to announcements. Board vacancies, Board of Adjustment and Appeals. There are 2 vacancies, all for 3-year terms. And we have an additional vacancy for an unexpired term ending September 21st, 2024. And then for our Natural Resources Preservation Advisory Board, we have 3 vacancies for unexpired terms ending April 30th, 2024. So hopefully some of those people who came forward would be consider filling those vacancies. Meetings and events coming up, April 11th at 1 p.m. We have Code Enforcement Board regular meeting. April 13th at 9:30 a.m., the Planning Board regular meeting. And 2 weeks from now, April 18th at 1:30, we have the Town Commission special, that's a regular meeting, right? Town Commission meeting. And there are no board action reports at this time. So next item is ordinances. So I guess Ingrid's going to come up, and it's to discuss the proposed ordinance, which is an ordinance of the Town Commission of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, amending section 4-8, lighting restrictions for protection of sea turtles. And
Rick Greenwald.
oh, sorry, I didn't realize there's another. Oh. Yeah, you want to make your public comment now? Do you want to? Okay, sure, if you'd like to do it now.
Rick Greenwald, Bellito, Tranquility Drive. 2 points before I get into my one area of concern. One is, personally, I'm extremely pro sea turtle, so I applaud this effort. And secondly, again, just I live far enough away from the beach that whatever ordinance is passed, it's not going to affect lighting from my particular dwelling. So when I first read the ordinance, I was delighted. I mean, I thought it offered great advice about how to help preserve the sea turtles. And I also thought on most of my first reading that it was going to be of relatively low immediate impact in terms of any mandatory requirements. It was going to be largely educational. It was going to apply mostly to new construction or major repairs or revisions. And that therefore it was going to be a great thing to look at, great for guidance for condo associations who on a voluntary basis really wanted to do something to help with the sea turtles. But there was going to be very little mandatory requirement involved for most of the buildings and residents. Then, and it's always possible that I read this wrong, I'm not an attorney, but I got down to section J, which is on page 8 of the ordinance, and I think page 23 of the agenda. And section J says that it applies to existing and other dwellings. And under that, there's a very long list of requirements, some of which to me seem like they might be considered by some to be moderately onerous. It involves taking down some existing lighting. It involves tinting of windows. It involves putting up shades. It involves repositioning TVs or other visual screens that might be seen from the beach. There's a long list, all of which make a lot of sense. But at least as I read the document, we're going to be a mandatory requirement in the ordinance. That doesn't mean that that's a bad idea. But the ordinance did not specify, as far as I could see on a second reading, what the enforcement was going to be, what the lead-in period was going to be, who was going to do the reporting, who was going to do the enforcing, whether this was effective immediately, retroactively, or there was a phase-in period, or how this was going to work. And then I looked at it and I said, you know, a couple of these things may actually be more than changing a light bulb. I mean, some of this could cost real money. And this is a time where everybody is faced with greatly expanding insurance costs. Many of the buildings that would be affected are already under state required and Highland Beach requirements to have significant inspections and potential repairs done. At least for now, under the state, they're required to have built up their reserves. And again, I like this idea. I love the fact that this came from the grassroots. And again, I'm a big loggerhead, leatherback, green, and even the rarer varieties fan. I just want to make sure that people who are going to be directly affected by this ordinance actually know what's going on, and some of the details that aren't specified, or at least as best as I could tell, weren't specified in the ordinance, are worked out and defined before it's passed. Again, I urge the commission to do all possible to enhance our beaches and our sea turtles and our natural beauty. Just want to make sure that, unlike Congress, everybody reads this and knows what's in it before it gets passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments about the ordinance? Hey, Ingrid?
Okay. Let me just state, first and foremost, this is the first read of the ordinance. It will have a second read. Well, we'll see when the second read is, depending on comments from the commission. Okay. So I did want to start off with just a brief background on this item. I indicated on page 8 of your agenda memorandum that back on October 18th of 2022, the commission considered an introduction of this particular ordinance. At that October 18th meeting, a motion was made by the commission to go ahead and send the proposed ordinance to the town's Natural Resources Preservation Advisory Board. They also asked that Gumbo Limbo and the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation, as well as the town's marine sea turtle permit holder, review the ordinance for their expert advice. Now, at the bottom of page 8, starting on the bottom of page 8, I provide you a summary of the comments from the Florida Fish and Wildlife, as well as Gumbo Limbo. I've also attached their emails to me regarding their comments. But before I get into that, I do want to go back to the October 18, 2022 memorandum, which I did provide in your packets. It's on page 11. And the only reason why I want to go back there is because in that particular memorandum, I do an analysis of what we currently have in our code as far as sea turtle protection, which is not much. So let me just go ahead back to that, and then we'll come back to this particular agenda memorandum on page 8. So if you go to page 11 of your packets, there's basically 2 chapters in the code right now that reference sea turtle lighting. One is in chapter 30 and one is in chapter 4. Now, the one regulation that we have in chapter 30, it's section 30-85. Again, it's at the top of your agenda packet on page 11. And this is what it states. All lighting of all structures east of State Road A1A shall comply with the sea turtle protection lighting standards as adopted by the town. Now, these sea turtle lighting standards are found in section 4-8, which reads, no artificial light shall illuminate any area of the beach which may be used for turtle nesting and hatching during the period from March 1st to October 31st of each year from dusk to dawn. That's it. That's all we have in the code right now. Now, what section 4-8 does not include, it doesn't talk about the different types of artificial lighting sources. It's not just the actual dwelling or the residences, but it's parking areas, it's walking paths, it's fountains, it's pools, we have lighting coming from all those areas. And also our section 4-8 does not address the specific types of lighting fixtures or lighting sources. Now, on page 11, I also provide for you what the town's comprehensive plan states as far as being supportive of sea turtle protection. Our coastal management and conservation element provides a variety of objectives and policies that support the protection of sea turtles. So I just want you to know that our comprehensive plan, which is a vision for our town, there's numerous elements, has, again, objectives and policies that promote protecting sea turtles. So it's sort of a justification, if you wish, for the ordinance. I also want to point out that the sea turtle ordinance is also part of the town's 2022 strategic priorities plan. It's a ranked project on that as well. Now, the ordinance that's before you today, it's based on the state of Florida's model ordinance. Now, the state developed the ordinance to guide local governments in creating a lighting ordinance because a lot of municipalities, especially small municipalities, don't have the staff to come up with a sea turtle lighting ordinance. As you can see, it can be very technical. There's a lot involved. So they create a state model and we based it off our town ordinance that we're proposing today is based off that state model. Okay. I also provided in that October 18th memorandum, some sea turtle nesting data, which I did get from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission. You could see they have 5 years of sea turtle nesting data for the town of Highland Beach. And also on page 14 of your packets is additional nesting data, again, provided from FWC for Boca Raton and Delray Beach. I think it's helpful to know what our neighbors to the north and south, what their nesting, sea turtle nesting data includes. And also it includes Palm Beach County. And you'll see that Juno Beach actually has the highest sea turtle nesting sites in Palm Beach County. So additional information. Now, according to the FWC, both the leatherback and green sea turtles are endangered while the loggerhead is threatened. Threats to each of these sea turtle species includes coastal development, which increases artificial lighting, which can be detrimental to hatchlings, causing them to migrate towards the light instead of the ocean. Okay, so now I'll go back to the memorandum for today's meeting dated April 4th. And actually, before I do that, I do have a PowerPoint that I wanted to show you some of the lighting fixtures. A lot of these slides I did get from FWC. Here we go. We can go to the next. Oh, do I have control here? Oh, there we go. I provided this diagram because it does show the frontal zone, and in the ordinance, it talks about a frontal dune. So just to give you all some perspective, again, maybe some of you are not as familiar with dunes, just shows you this cross section of where the frontal dune is. So as I said, it's referenced in the ordinance. So again, here's my source here, FWC, as I mentioned earlier. Here's some examples of shielded. Again, you'll look in the ordinance as a reference a lot to shielded, downward directed lights. These are some examples. What I like about it, they have the bad example. Very straightforward. This is an unshielded light. There's that white light. This is the light that turtles often go to the brightest light. On a natural beach, the horizon, the natural light, it's usually the ocean, going towards the ocean. But when you have bright lights like this, the turtles get disoriented and they think, oh, that's where I need to go. And you have, turtles, or when the hatchlings come out, they end up crashing into the retaining wall of a condominium. So I want to point that out. And here's an example of the good type of light. This is the amber light. This is that red, orange light. These are the long wavelength lights that are, again, referenced in your ordinance. These, again, don't disorient the turtles. Here you have, again, examples of this long wavelength, which is the amber color, orange, red color lights. Here you have, again, an incandescent bulb, the good amber light, shielded and pointing downward. And then again, just a general example of the unshielded light, that bright white light versus here's the full cutoff. You can see there's like a little hat on top of the light, which prevents the light from going up, points downward. Get back to that in just a second. So going back to the April 4th, starting on page 8, I've gone ahead and summarized the FWC comments. I'll just go through them briefly. They asked us to add a foot candle definition, and I've gone ahead and added that. It's consistent with the state model ordinance. The state model ordinance does have a foot candle definition. I provided that in double bold and double underline on page 17 of your packets. They also asked for a light transmittance of 15 to 30%. Now, I will get to that in just a moment. I have a whole section on page 9 that talks about light transmittance. So I'll get to that in a moment. They also asked that we add to section 4-8K4, which is on page 24. This is regarding temporary construction. They talk about turning off lights or turn off during nighttime. I want to make the commission aware that we have hours of construction here in the town. They're between 8 and 6 p.m. on Monday through Friday, and on Saturdays, 9 to 3 p.m. So we wouldn't have any construction going on at night anyway. So next comment was to revise the definition of beach to reflect the toe of the dune. Again, I will defer to the model ordinance. It provides a definition of beach, and that's what we used. The next comment, I'm sorry, that was, I'm now on Gumbo Limbo on top of page 9. They asked us to provide certified wildlife lighting definition where choices can be found. I don't recommend putting email addresses or web addresses on a code because these things can change. I think anyone seeing this provision in the code where it references certified wildlife lighting, you could just type that in Google and you'll be able to find the source, I should say. It goes on here for temporary lighting includes cell phone screens. This was added to the ordinance. Again, it's on page 18, it's double bolded and underlined. Again, they provide a light transmittance of 15% or 15% or 50% of all windows within 100 feet of the dune, or 45% for 100 feet beyond the dune. I'll get to that in just a moment. And the last one was for proposed existing exterior lighting. Include the removal of televisions away from the windows. We've gone ahead and added that on page 24. Okay. Also, at the October 18th, 2022 meeting, the commission did have a discussion, and you had asked us to add examples of the colors that pertain to this definition of long wavelength. And you could see on page 18, I've gone ahead and added those colors. Now, I want to make a reference to the gentleman that just made the comment about those existing provisions in the code. I note here that when the ordinance was provided to the commission at introduction on October 18, 2022, the code read, or I should say the ordinance read, reduce or eliminate the negative effects of existing exterior artificial lighting through the following measures. Those are the provisions that was just referenced in letter J. I'll give you the page number, 23, I believe. Okay, yes. So if you go to page 23 of your packets, you will see it says letter J, existing exterior and interior lighting. All existing exterior and interior lighting shall be subject to the following regulations. When the ordinance was provided to you on October 18th, this sentence wasn't there. And that is because, and I referenced this in the staff report, when the ordinance is ready for public hearing, I routed to the town attorney. He indicated that these particular regulations, you either put a shall or they are recommended measures. Now, the rest of the ordinance is all about shalls, okay? And so a shall was put there. But again, if the commission wants to have a discussion, if you want them to be suggested remedial measures, that's fine. I believe the county has it that way. There's other municipalities that don't. It's a shall. I know I looked at Golden Beach, which is a municipality in Miami-Dade County that's comparable to the town of Highland Beach. They have a shall. So this is something that, of course, the commission can discuss. Now, getting into light transmittance, again, I'm on the page number 9 of your packets. The state model, once again, has a light transmittance of 45%. So the ordinance before you today is also 45%. I've provided a table at the bottom of page 9, which shows you what other municipalities in Palm Beach County provide as far as light transmittance. Boca Raton, Delray Beach have 45% or less. Palm Beach County as well. There are several municipalities, which I note in the table, that they comply with Palm Beach County regulations once it comes to sea turtles. So they also, of course, through default, have the 45% or less. Now, also in your packets, you have several pages of a lighting study. This was conducted by the county. It was an informal study, but I think it's very relevant to show you what the reality is on the beach. And I also wanted to mention that we do have Joanne Ryan here today. She is the Marine Turtle Sea Permit Turtle Holder. I always get that. It's a little bit of a tongue twister. She'd be happy to address any questions. She's addressed several questions when it went to the Natural Resources Board, also the Planning Board. She's the eyes on the ground. She's on the front lines as well. And lastly, I just want to make you aware of the Natural Resources Board provided you a recommendation. It's on page 10 of your packets. And then the Planning Board also reviewed it, the ordinance, and they just adopted it as it was presented to them. So I'm happy to address any questions that you may have. Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to put up that chart. Can we go back to that transmittance slide? It's in your packets, but I put it up as a slide as well. I'm sorry, it's the next one here. So this shows you the transmittance. Again, we're right around here. 45 is what we're proposing. As you see, you go lower, it gets darker. So it's really an issue of a darker aesthetic. And I think some people may not be happy to look out their windows and have it extremely dark. So I'll be happy to address any questions you might have on this issue.
Do we want Joanne Ryan to come up to Joanne? Would you like to make any comments? Just ask questions. Okay. Okay. I didn't know if you had anything additional. Okay. Anyone want to go first as far as questions goes? Do you want to? Okay, I can get started. Yeah, I guess. Go ahead. Oh, Judy, you want to get started? Go ahead. Go ahead.
You're right there on the ground on the beach.
Yeah.
Tell us what do you see as far as the illumination coming from whether the east or west of A1A on the beach?
Okay, so I'm not really, when I'm out there really early, I'm looking for bright white lights. And anything that I need to report, it's reported to Jeff. So not everybody has bright white lights on the beach. We have had instances where there's construction going on and the timers didn't go off, or the workers left the lights on. And that's an issue. Bright white light on the beach does distract the female nesting turtles, and especially the hatchlings. When they emerge, they come out of a dark hole and they're looking for the brightest source of light on a natural beach. Like Ingrid said, would be the light, the horizon over the ocean on a natural beach with no white light. They would go right there. But when there's white light on the beach, they get distracted. And sometimes we have hatchlings that go north and south and west, and they travel all over the beach until they figure out where they have to go. And in the meantime, they're getting picked up by crabs, they're getting picked up by birds, they're exerting a lot of energy. So, we're trying to protect the species, and here, that's really affecting their numbers because they're dying by the time they get there. I did, before I came here today, I pulled my spreadsheet from last year. I just wanted to tell you guys how busy Highland Beach is with turtles. Last year, in 2.8 miles of Highland Beach, we had 2,371 turtle crawls on this beach. We are broken down into 5 zones because I have 20 people on the permit. We walk. We're not like Gumbo Limba on an ATV or Ocean Ridge. So we have groups of people in each zone every morning that walk a half a mile or so. Of the 2,371 crawls, we had 1,092 nests and 1,279 false crawls, which means the turtle has come up, not nested, and turned and went back out. Whether or not white light affected them, we don't know, because it is a natural thing for them to sometimes come up. They're not happy with the sand. Maybe there was construction, beach renumber, whatever, and they'll go back out. But we did last year have a higher count of false crawls than we did nests. So just wanted to say that.
Now, you're there in the morning, not in the evening.
We're there first thing in the morning, pre-dawn, every morning, from March 1st till October 31st.
Okay, that's all for me.
I really have more questions for Ingrid at this point. I need other things answered first.
Okay.
Go ahead. I mean, I just say, all your questions, whether for Ingrid or for Joanne.
Okay. I read this ordinance several times.
Okay.
And I find it overly cumbersome and difficult to understand. And I can't imagine how an ordinary homeowner is going to know what they can and cannot do by reading this.
Okay.
I echo some of Dr. Greenwald's statements, which is I'm concerned about high costs. I'm concerned about whether or not there's a phase-in period. I mean, among other things, a lot of the buildings are already experiencing high costs because they're doing recertification projects. And to add another high cost on right away, as opposed to phasing it in, seems to be a little onerous as well. I agree. We need to protect the turtles, and I have no issue with that. And I don't mean that we should leave it the way it is. I think it needs to be restricted somewhat, but I think we need to have a balance between protecting people who want to go out for a walk and protecting the turtles. There has to be some way that we can balance those two things. We have a lot of people who want to walk on the beach, and people like to walk on the beach at night as well. And I don't want accidents. Or even people who are walking outside of their buildings and they're on the ocean side. So we need some sort of balance where people can see where they're going. As well as, and I think part of it, I think the darker lights, the long wavelength lights may help a lot with that, where you can change it from an incandescent bulb to an LED bulb with long waves. Yeah, I'm concerned about enforcement. We're a small town. We can't have somebody out there every night seeing if someone's television screen can be seen from the beach. I wonder how we deal with that. I mean, I find requiring a building to put up film on all the windows to be a little excessive right now. The state, are we required to follow what the state has, and how different is Palm Beach County's requirements from the states, and are we required to follow Palm Beach County's?
Palm Beach County also has a 45% transmittance, but when it comes to letter J, again, that's for existing exterior interior lighting. As I mentioned earlier, Palm Beach County, it's not a shall for these. You don't have to reposition all that. It's a suggested remedial measure.
Okay, because new construction, I understand. You haven't done anything yet, so do it in the best way possible.
Right.
Existing buildings that you aren't altering. And again, I understand if you're altering it, you're making changes anyway. So you do it to follow the code and a best scenario. I'm not sure that I would go with a 20%. That seems to be pretty dark.
Yes, that's very dark.
People pay a lot of money to look out their windows onto the beach.
Yes.
And if you're making it blacker than it already is,
Exactly.
that could be an issue, and that could affect our values, our home values.
Again, that's what FWC, we also have a letter from the Sea Turtle Conservancy. They also are suggesting the 30%, which is much darker, a darker aesthetic. As you mentioned, people looking out their window, it's going to be darker. So we modeled, or we use the 45% transmittance, which if you could look at that, it's in your packet, that little chart that I provided. There's a bit more light coming through.
Yeah,
on the
well, there was a big
45%.
difference between
Yes,
the 30 and the 50. I mean,
yes,
even if we did it to 40, which might darken it a little bit more
yes.
than that.
It's on page 40, by the way, on your packets.
What about the street lights? Because they're obviously visible on the beach. But we can't get rid of street lights because we can't have cars driving down this road without lights. And if they do, then instead of regular lights on, they're going to put their brights on, which would be even worse.
Yeah, there is a provision on page 21 under the parking areas and roadways. It talks about lighting of roadways and parking areas shall produce no more lighting than the minimum requirement as outlined by federal, state, and local law. Says parking area and roadway lighting shall be shielded from the beach via vegetation, natural features, artificial structures, or artificial structures rising from the ground. Goes on to talk about a few more things. Again, G1, again, page 21, all lighting of parking areas and roadways shall be long wavelength, downward directed, full cutoff, fully shielded and mounted to the minimum level required to maintain compliance with federal, state, and local.
And what does FPL do with the road, the street lights on our road? Since
I'm not
individual
sure if they're
buildings
red.
aren't
I
gonna
don't know
do
if they're
that.
amber or not. I'd have to look into that a little bit more.
And do we have any numbers as to how long they've been functional and if there are more accidents than there were before they were changed? I mean, a lot of this is public safety, and as I said, it's got to be a balance. It can't just be all, and I'm sure Jeff doesn't want to go walk in the beach every night. So, yeah, those are some concerns. I find it very difficult to understand. I
Yeah.
think there's too many moving parts, quite frankly.
Okay.
Thank you. I'd like to echo many of those concerns. First, I'd like to say I'm 100% in favor of long-term of putting this protection in. I do think there's a difference in timing was brought up, and that's a big issue. And I think there's also a difference in timing relative to common areas, which I know some people since the 2 years ago, the pictures have addressed and putting in the amber lighting and so forth. And one where a condo, for example, all the units that face directly onto the beach and what's under common area and what's individual owners and how that gets put into place and the execution of those things, to me, are of major concern of how that does in fact happen.
The ordinance does look at common areas like pool area, right? It does delve into all that, so.
Yeah, so I also agree with the existing, with what the comments have said, people have said so far, and I would be in favor of changing it from a shall to the suggested
Okay.
remedial, whatever that
Yes,
verbiage was.
suggested remedial measures, I believe is how
That was, yeah, I think that is definitely better, because I think people want to see, what are some things that you can do to improve the situation. And then I guess my other question too, even for new construction, are all the regulations overly, like, I don't know, overly, maybe not the right word, are they onerous for new construction for those contractors?
You mean for the tinting and all that?
Yeah, I mean, even all the regulations for new, because we're kind of saying, oh, for new construction, yeah, make them adhere to them, but are some of those onerous as well? Or
We haven't had any new multi-family, condominiums coming in. I know that we have had single family homes. And because we didn't really have anything in the code to say, okay, here's a sea turtle, we have been encouraging people to put sea turtle lighting. Did we have any condos coming in to redo their lighting recently? Or I think you had mentioned that we encouraged them to do the sea turtle lighting if some condo is considering changing out lighting, right now we just encourage them to make sure that it's sea turtle friendly.
And when you say sea turtle friendly, you're saying they're adhering to this recommended?
Well, no, because we don't have the provisions right now, but yeah, sea turtle friendly. I mean,
What does that mean? So
it
are they
means full
following-
cutoff, right? The amber light, downward directed.
They are
That's
doing
right.
that and they're fine. And okay, maybe that's a question for
Yeah.
Jeff later. So I think it's not just an issue for existing, but maybe even for new construction too. Don't want to make it so onerous, for them either. I mean, I don't know. I don't really have a good
Again,
feel for.
with regards to the windows and the tinting, I mean, I reached out to a company that installs window tinting and interestingly enough, they had a whole page on their website that talked about sea turtles and sea turtle ordinances. And they just put the tinting on the window. They put the tinting on and then they install the window. So I don't know from the transmittance perspective, whether it's extremely onerous. I had asked her, is there a difference in price between 45% tint and 30%? She's like, no, really it's not a difference in price. So.
But it's
I don't
more
know.
than just the tinting, right? There's all those
Yeah,
other, there's a lot more
Right, pool
other.
lighting directed down, walkway lighting directed down. As far as like the walkway, I don't know that it's a matter of not having it, but just directing it more downward and it'd be a redder light than
Right,
a
and the
white
color,
ended,
the color
or
temperature.
by putting those, caps on top to filter it downward.
What's the toe of the dune? Because there was a part that said, don't refer to it as beach, but refer to
Yeah,
it
that
as
was a
toe of the
comment from,
dune. And I'd like to see where that is, so I know what we're talking about.
Well, it was a comment from Gumbo Limbo, because it's on page 9 on the top. They wanted us to put it, to revise the definition of beach, right, to reflect the toe of the dune rather than permanent vegetation. The state ordinance, the model ordinance doesn't have a definition for toe of the dune. And I don't believe when they gave me the comment via email that they provided a definition. So if you wanted to move in that direction, I'd have to research and see what's an appropriate definition. Maybe FWC has a definition of toe of the dune, but I didn't see it in the state model ordinance.
And do we know which buildings on the west side of A1A you can see the lights on the
Yeah,
beach?
we haven't done that assessment, but I mean, that's a good point. The code does, this proposed ordinance calls out that if you could see light from the beach, regardless if it's on the west side, if you could see it from the west, if you have a home on the west side and you could see the light on the beach, you would have to comply with the provisions. We haven't done that analysis yet on where you could see. the beach.
Because there may very well be some, especially higher floors, that you can see
Yes.
onto the beach. Yeah, I think we need more information, to be honest. than
So you
what-
want an assessment or is it what? you could
yeah, well,
delve a little bit
because
more on what.
If we're going to put this into effect, I would like every building and private home to know if they're covered by it or not. Can you see the lights from that building on the beach? And I think that we need to have, I would make it recommended, but I also would perhaps for other parts of it, have a phase in so that we're aiming to get all of the lights, certainly those directly on the beach, changed over, but that it doesn't need, not immediately.
I just have a few comments. I agree completely that as far as the phase in, this doesn't seem to be an economic impact. We don't know what the economic impact is.
Yeah, we did not do it again.
And, you know, I think that's very significant. Also, with respect to new and old, well, initially what struck me is that it was unclear at the beginning whether it was just a prospective effect. Is it retroactive? And certainly later on, it talks about existing structures. So we're talking about everything is in the mix. And with respect to new construction, now does that have the shall rather than the may?
That's correct.
Well, that seems to also be defined to include renovations, replace, reposition. So you're talking about not only new, but you know, someone is redoing their apartment. They're gutting the
Right.
apartment. They're going to change the windows or
Right.
their
when you look-
window, you know, their decorations. So much does impact it. And I think that has to be flushed out. I was taken with, on the agenda for the October 18th and the objective 1.4, that we want to support protection and conservation of the coastal natural resources. But the last sentence says the town will have met this objective through the provision of educational materials regarding the protection. You know, we certainly go way beyond that. To some extent, pretty onerous. Compliance, I mean, why do it if you don't have any muscle? It's a nice advisory for everyone to understand, and I think we have to use common language so that even the non-lawyers can understand it. The lawyers are on the commission, both I acknowledge also, very hard to read, to understand, especially with all the you know, the specific language that may not be that familiar. I'd be interested also in knowing what code enforcement says about this, as far as the lights would be objectionable in the evening from dusk on. So in the morning, certainly we can see, but it's in the evening hours is very important. So if we're not on the beach, how do we know?
Someone would be on the beach and I guess Mr. Rivas could talk a little bit more about enforcement.
All right.
Yeah.
I think also we should have some expansion of what educational workshops, notices will be provided. I see it had STC has free resources. And we could possibly see what written materials they have, how they've promoted it.
I'm sorry, you're referring to objective 1.4, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I think obviously we have the manager's minute. There's many ways to get information out, but I also wanted to point out, and maybe I'm sure you saw this on page 12, policy 3.3.3 says the town will include in its land development regulations. So it's not just educational outreach, that it will include in the land development regulations provisions to require limitations on outside lighting so as to not attract sea turtle hatchlings away from water during hatching season. So I just want to point out that there is a policy that specifically talks about changing the land development regulations, which is what we're proposing.
Okay, did you want?
Yeah,
Michael?
if I could, a couple of things, streetlights, I believe, FPL turns off some of them to darken the corridor during turtle season. The other question I think you hit on there, and this is something that I want to know or need to know to help with Ingrid and Jeff. If you go to replace it, you're replacing something or new construction. Are we concerned if you have a shielded light versus an unshielded light if you're replacing the light? I understand like forcing people to do it when there's nothing wrong with what they currently have, but if you go to replace it, do we have an objection to them doing the shielded light when they're going to be replacing the lights anyhow? And if we're not, then the ordinance structure is good with that change in J to recommendation, because right now it's really driven through a building permit. So if you're coming in and doing a whole new lighting project and electrical work, Jeff's going to say, oh, when you put the new lighting in, if this is in place, you have to have the shielded lights, this or that. Or if you're replacing all your sliders on your building, the way it's written, then you would have to be putting in the 45%, which is built into the glass, the hurricane glass itself. Is that what is objectionable? And what I'm saying is, we speak a lot to wanting to protect the turtles, and this is, or it gets us there incrementally. Every time you get a permit to replace it, then you're obligated to replace it. What I'm hearing a little bit, I just want to make sure I'm hearing this correctly, is we want to keep it totally to a recommendation set of regulations, which then you wouldn't need an ordinance. In that point, we would remove the ordinance and say, here's some guidelines, best of luck. But right now, if there's bright white light on the beach and we get word of it, we go with code enforcement and Jeff to those buildings and say, turn off your lights. So we make you turn them off. So we render them useless under our current ordinance. So it's kind of a catch-22 that if you want some lighting right now, the lighting you have, if it is white light on the beach, the way the ordinance is written, we tell you to turn them off until basically Halloween, just turn them off and then you can turn them back on for season. So it's kind of you're kind of pushing different ways. If we don't do anything, if we get those complaints about the lights, we ask you to turn them off. And we can have that ability to keep them turned off. Most people, the thing I say, most people are okay with it. Most people will say, okay, that's fine. We'll just turn them off. Or I know Commissioner Peters said something, they were working on something on their beach lights to amber it. It wasn't a big deal. They put a little tape on it just to kind of make it on the beachfront. So I think folks are doing this already and embracing it. But I could see the J that everybody's talking about with saying like everything right away. Yes, but the way it's written now, it's development and redevelopment. So when you replace it, we ask that you follow these state prescribed guidelines to get us to that protection piece. So
If I could
So I
just
just
add.
want to clarify, what you're saying, but how about page 23J, existing exterior? How is that incrementally?
Jay, I said, Jay, with your change, you would need
Oh,
to change
with
that.
the change.
I agree with you that you would have to,
Okay.
because if you change that,
Okay.
then when you go to like, all your lights are kind of rusted out, and you're like, I need all the
Right.
new lights around the
Right, right,
pool.
right.
We would ask, or not really ask, require, at that
Okay.
point, they be shielded, you use the amber lights, then Jeff would apply that, just like he
Okay.
applies the building code that to get a permit, you need to do
Okay.
these type of things.
Okay,
That's how
so
it's
that's
written.
what would be shall.
Yeah, the
And then
shall,
this would be.
you guys seem to want
everything
the,
would be
don't get
included.
everybody, we
Okay.
want to do this
Okay.
progressively, if that's
Okay.
a good word or
That makes
not,
sense to me.
yeah.
Now, what happens Christmas?
That's not.
Red lights.
Okay.
We ask for amber lights, I don't know.
It's
outside of turtle season, so we're okay.
For us.
Thank goodness, right?
Yes,
Glenn, does this mean that someone who wants to throw a party, who has a home on the ocean side, can't throw a party around their pool or a back area?
I mean, they could, it really just governs the type of lighting they have. So you could throw a party, but you know,
You don't want someone
well,
falling in.
are
the
you
pool.
talking about someone, you know, goes back to what Marshall was talking about. For the existing people, we're just encouraging them. But for, you know, new, it would be required.
And what does the 100 feet refer to? I mean, it talks about being 100 feet from, I'm gonna say the beach for lack of a better word.
Where's the,
Toe of the dune, which is basically the lower front side of a dune is the toe of it. Think of it like your foot, like point of the foot where that goes and hits the regular part of the beach is that. And that's where you call from the toe of the dune and measure back. Westward, if you will, for us. Westward.
Well, are there any buildings that are further back than that on the beach side?
There's a few. Some that aren't. It's kind of, again, if you look at the beach erosion study we did, right? It's some parts to the north, they're good. They have a lot of beach front before you get to their homes, before you have an issue. Some condos are right on, there's almost no toe of a dune. It's basically their wall face is on there. So, I mean, it's just not an easy thing. You're right. It's a difficult read. I remember when Ingrid put it on my desk, I was like, "Oof, this is going to be tough to get the community through this. Like, how do you, remittance and, pass through lighting and wavelength. This isn't I don't go to a party and we talk about wavelength. on light, you talk about other things, about the turtles and why it's important to protect it versus how do we get there. So these are the pieces that are a little more challenging. But I think you're right. If you put it to recommended, you don't hit that and you allow it as you go to replace stuff or build it new. And that's my question to you all is, are we good to require these types of things? Maybe if it's too much in one part, then let us know, we can roll it back. But if people go to replace it, are we okay then to start requiring shielded lights, amber colored lights, 45% transmittance through glass? Are we okay with that? That's the question I think really helps Ingrid as to crafting that just the way you want it. Are you okay with that kind of concept?
Are we requiring that if you do renovations on the beach side, but you're not doing lighting, you're doing other kinds of things, would they have to change their lighting if they weren't
No.
doing lighting as part?
I would say no, not
I would
unless,
believe only if it's the lighting, correct?
but knowing Jeff and Ingrid, they'd say, hey, you may want to change your lights.
We can
That's what
always
we do. We do
encourage.
everything we
We can
can
always
to get you
encourage.
there. Yeah.
I want to get Commissioner Peters, do you have any additional comments?
Yes, I'm kind of worried. I mean, I'm believing in the preservation of the turtles, but I'm worried about, like somebody suggested there, about a party. So if I have a party on the beach and I got lights showing, and then the code enforcement or the police department come and you got a neighbor that doesn't like it, calls up on you, I'm worried about those situations. And also, does the light affect, like our building is right on the beach? So if I'm on the third floor of the penthouse, does it matter if my lights are brighter on top or on the bottom? That was one of my questions.
It's really about if the light can be seen from the beach. There's really no other threshold. The ordinance, I think in that way is very clear. There's definitions that talk about indirectly visible, directly visible, and it's all if you could see the light from the beach. It just
Right.
boils.
I know when I used to live in Pompano, they would have somebody walk on the beach and they would tell you at night that apartment on the 10th floor, the lights are too bright. Will
Right.
that occur?
That could occur.
That's what occurs now. That's how we do it now is that we get those. Joanne and her team will say, hey, there's some bright lights here or there. Could you, they'll let us know. And then we'll go to the property owner, the condo, the building manager and say, hey, on this building, can you, tell them to turn those lights off, that kind of thing. So we kind of, it's hard to see over here. Yes. Do those type of things.
And how would the 100 feet back deal with that? Because you could have a building that's 100 feet back. And maybe the lights that are on the lower level wouldn't be as obvious, but as Don was saying, up above, you could probably see that out well into the ocean. So at one point, does the 100 feet back take precedence.
Where's the 100
I was gonna
feet?
say, where are you reading?
I know,
that
I'm
from?
not, I'm a little,
I don't see it.
I
There
was gonna ask
I-
Ingrid, she knows everything.
I know there was someplace where it said 100 feet back from the beach.
Maybe it was a comment from one of the agencies. Let's see.
Ah, here. Oh, yeah, actually, it was Gumbo Limbo.
Yes,
Within 100 feet of the toe of the beach and 45% for beyond, 100 feet beyond.
that was specific to the light transmittance.
Right.
They're giving a little bit of wiggle room there. So that's specific to light transmittance. Yeah, that was their suggestion.
Hmm.
I was going to say, just to make an additional point to Mr. Labadie, what he had said. We've amended the code in the last 3 years. We changed some encroachments, I think, for walkways, if you're adjacent to a waterway. Right, we're not making everyone comply to that. Only when you come in and you want to make a change, you have to comply with this new provision. So I just wanted to add that additional note. We deal with that constantly, yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, I think one question that came up is the 45% remittance of the light. I mean, I kind of like that because it's consistent with what some of the other towns have done and it's an improvement over, what we have now. So I'm in favor of that. I'm in favor of making it more understandable. I'm in favor of, doing recommended for, existing and then shall for new existing. Because it seems like it just kind of boils down to a few things. The light remittance, the shielded lights.
Right.
So it kind of boils down to just like a few things. And it sounds like people who are in new construction are open to doing that. I guess one question I had, Juneau seems to have the best results.
Yeah.
Do they have this very restrictive?
No.
No.
We follow Juneau. I would represent Juneau. We follow the counties and the county, those are not mandatory for existing. So
So why-
Juneau Beach just incorporates the county within their code.
It's similar to this, just with. the
Similar to
change,
this
the
with how
J
you,
change,
how the
yes.
Right,
commission
but
was.
for them, it's the
Oh,
remedial.
they do remedial.
Remedial.
So they don't require it for existing, it's just suggested, guys.
And they do the 45%?
Yes.
Yes,
So we would be moving towards what the best beach in our Palm Beach County.
yeah, you all have a lot more residential
Right.
right on the beach than
Right.
Juneau Beach. They have a lot of areas where there's no residential, so it's a little
Right.
easier.
Hence the
Maybe
first
hence
feature
more
list.
turtles, yeah.
Right,
Yes,
which is
I have
why,
more nest.
right,
They have a lot of set aside, so it's easier.
right. Okay. So,
Just one other comment. I suggest you also look separately at the Sands to make sure that the hotel, to make sure, because they have a lot of turnover of folks and parties and things. So that could be of concern as well.
Okay. Obviously, they would have to comply with the ordinance, right? It's all properties in the town, so. Any other comments?
does that give you
And
enough
that may-
direction?
That may have a quite extreme impact on them. They have parties on the beach, weddings, catered events.
Even just dinner,
Yeah.
which would be after dusk.
Well, again, looking at the direction you're kind of going, it would be if they decide to replace their lighting, then it would trigger, right? If we make some of those changes to letter J.
Is there any formal action that you need to have direction?
So you have a couple of options. You could approve first reading and direct changes before second, or if you want to see those before you go first, Ingrid and I would make those changes and bring it back to you then, and we would do the first read at a later date. Say at the next meeting, we'll do a first read with the changes directed and go from there.
I'd rather see changes first at First Street afterwards.
Okay.
Me too.
I agree.
Yeah,
Very good.
I agree.
Seems
I
pretty.
agree.
Yep,
Okay.
seems unanimous. So we have some direction, so we'll bring it back to the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and it's the approval of all the minutes, March 7th, March 21st, March 24th. Any changes to the minutes?
No changes.
No changes?
I have no
No
change.
changes. No changes.
Okay, I don't have any
I-
changes either. So
I
there
move
much-
we approve the minutes as written.
All in-
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Excellent. Item 10, unfinished business, the fire rescue implementation update.
Yes, thank you. Again, the first thing I'd point out to, again, hit home as we continue to do with all of our communications this Friday. The front of the lot is closed. So everybody coming to access town hall will be asked to use the two-way entrance on the south side of the complex coming in. The loop will not be allowed or permitted. The mailbox is going to be moved, Pat, tomorrow, Thursday, Pat and his team are going to move it. If the US Postal Service doesn't beforehand, put it out to the little roundabout there at the library. But then this will be closed off. So you won't be able to come in. So we'll have some conflict. So I apologize. We've sent it out to everybody, but some folks just until they come to the site and see, something locked down, you can't park in the right of way. We have people, just parking out in front and walking in that, no, you got to come around and park. So those conflicts will start. We're hoping that in time, those will work themselves out as people come into the site and get used to seeing an active construction site out front and lock that down. Again, the northern portion of that lot is for the existing firefighters. We'll be able to park in there a little bit as we go. And then the rest of the site would be active construction. So parking is now changed forever, starting on Friday. So, and we will rework it from there. So the other item again would be the GMP amendment, the guaranteed maximum price amendment with Kaufman Lynn would be the next big item on that. We're proceeding with putting together our recruitment strategy to start bringing in firefighters. Everything, policies, equipment, everything's coming in. Trucks out for a paint job as far as the rescue. Again, so we've secured all the necessary equipment. We're moving forward. Chief, you got anything on that?
We got a lot on that.
Okay.
Glenn Joseph, Fire Chief. We're evaluating some computer software for reporting systems. We've narrowed it down to about 2 or 3 vendors, and that's why I came back from just a minute ago. So the next week or two, we should have narrowed it down to the whole package where we do the pre-fire plans and the medical reporting and those kind of things. So we're getting close on that. Rescue 116, we have installed the radios, installed the stretcher. It's up at vendor getting painted to the final scheme that we decided. I'll get some renderings before we actually do the actual painting. It's going to take a few weeks because there's a couple of people ahead of us. It's a big truck to get the whole thing in. So we're moving forward there. We've received our Florida EMS license for both the ambulance we own and the fire truck that's still being stored. They would not license the 2 units that's being used by Delray because they could only have 1 license on any particular vehicle. So when we take ownership of it next year, we will get a license almost immediately. We've checked all the boxes for that to happen. Developing policy procedures, like the manager said, beginning the process of recruiting. So probably the next 3 weeks we'll have it posted. So we're looking for our staff. We're looking for 24 people. And so it's going to be interesting because the market is kind of strange right now with a shortage of qualified people, but the demographics we're looking at, we may get some leeway on that. I've gotten a lot of interest already. We did advertise for the coordinator, which is basically my assistant for clerical stuff. And we've gotten 12 applicants so far. It's been open since Thursday evening. And we're looking at closing it soon because already 12 applicants is a lot. We're putting some feelers. We're putting accepting applications for the fire marshal, community risk reduction, assistant chief of community risk reduction. We qualify fire marshal. We've already received 5 applicants, so we might be able to shutting that down maybe the next week or thereabouts because of the amount of response we're getting. So I'm getting optimistic that moving forward we will get the firefighters that we need. Do you want me to address some of the issues with the comments earlier, or?
If you're prepared, yes.
I'm always prepared. So some of the issues that were brought up about the overtime, and I think what was missed in that presentation was that Fair Labor Standards Act has an exception for firefighters and public safety personnel, police and fire. So you could have up to we could pay on a 26-day cycle and up to 212 hours. What that means is that if you go over 53 hours in a pay cycle, in a week, but calculate over 26 days, then we got to pay overtime. So this is why we have the 3 Kelly Day. So they're working 3 24-hour shifts. Over the next 3 weeks, we'll have 24 hours above that 56-hour threshold. So we'll give them that day off. That brings us down to 48 hours per 3 weeks. So we don't get to that overtime threshold. And that overtime threshold takes care of the $800,000 overage he's talking about in our budget. So we're not paying overtime until they go over that 53-hour week, 53 hours per week over a 3-week period. So that's where the issue is. So if that takes away that $800,000 overage he's talking about, and the rest of it we've already calculated for, and our numbers I think are pretty solid as far as myself and David. We had an issue with overtime budget. We did analysis of all the major fire departments in the county, and all of them are between 4% to 19% over their total budget. And we've planned for 15%, which is above. I think we'd be around 8 to 10%, but we're planning for 15% just in case. So again, those numbers are well within our scope of what we've prepared for. And so the overage for the overtime does not exist. So I don't know that there is a major issue. It's just a matter of basically discussing the details of the law. Fairly has been around since 1938, so it's not anything new. And we've changed, they've made some changes over the last 20, 30 years. We kept up with it, so we know what's happening there. Any specific questions?
Yeah. And the debt service numbers, I don't know where those are coming from. We have a 3% interest rate, not a 30% interest rate. Seems like that would be a payment on a 30%. So maybe there was a calculation issue that we're paying. Because basically, if you take that over 10 years, that's over $8 million to borrow 5. We're not paying those type of interest rates, just to let folks know. So I think there's a couple of hiccups in the numbers. We're tracking, as David showed you in the 5-year projection, we're tracking to be less than the city of Delray Beach with the net present value of over 6 years to recoup our $10 million investment on top of that. So we're in really good shape. I don't know if David has more details. I'm not quite sure on some of this, where the numbers come from, but we could represent that at a next meeting just to bring it down and make sure we're all on the same page moving forward.
Yeah, specifically compare it to
Yeah.
this.
I'll have David bring up his numbers. He could probably do it now, but we'll do it at the next meeting. We'll bring up and go over fire budget, our projections, the net present value, personnel costs, things of that nature. So
Yeah, I mean, there's several things. Number one, we currently pay for a lease. Right? And so when we transition to our fire department, we pay $10 and we get the truck on top of our current truck. We've already established that Delray Beach has been charging us between 6 and 9% more on average per position than their entire fire department for entire Delray, right? So we already know that we're paying Delray's Beach most expensive captain, lieutenant, firefighter, driver, engineers, wherever they're at in Delray Beach, they're planted here as their most expensive. So we already know that. We've established that. The other thing, we pay 5% of Delray Beach's overhead. So think about how expensive Delray Beach's overhead is. They tack on another 5%. And then the last thing Delray Beach does is they charge us a 5% profit. So at the end of the day, we are going to save money in based on our calculations, based on our excellent interest rate that the board jumped in 6 months before we needed it, locked that in for the construction. And we estimated overtime, as the chief had said. Chief went out and surveyed several towns that are our size. Hey, what do you do in overhead? We added that to our budget. And then he calculated, I didn't see the numbers, what you have in front of you. He calculated 30% for benefits. We estimated 50%. So again, I don't mind being wrong in the right direction, right? So we'll address that.
But I think it's good to have the public involved and ask these. It's really good. It's to have people engaged and to clarify, because I think this will just serve to clarify everyone's understanding. So it's excellent. So yeah, and thank you for addressing those questions. Okay, ready to move on to the next item, to approve and authorize the mayor to execute a guaranteed maximum price amendment to the construction manager at risk.
All right, team,
Okay.
come on up. So Len's here, went over this extensively, ins and outs. Jeff's here from Kaufman Lynn, ins and outs. So again, you're looking at a $8.5 million project. It does have contingencies in there. And we're always working to find better options and costs. I'll even say Eric's fine today, moving off $160,000 builder's risk policy to a rider on our existing policy at 55, we save 100 there. So boom. So when you work in cooperation, and Kaufman Lynn said, here's what you should expect. Here's really where your risk exposure is. Our risk HR and risk director took that, found something a little bit better. That's kind of how this process works, that if there's an opportunity there in the spirit of cooperation, we work towards what's best for the community and the project. So that's what we have today. Again, it has the drawings which are referenced. Again, we work with Kaufman Lynn to close out each of those subs to make sure what they pay is what they said they were going to pay, and work through that. I don't know what else to say. I mean, it's again, you saw the CMA risk, the construction manager risk, the 68-page document we did last time. This is the amendment to include the price,
84.
timeline, liquidated damages. We're not going to have any liquidated damages. Nope. Good. So we're going to stay on schedule, on point, and complete this project by April 14th. So
And as Len is saying, we're on page 384. Is that where we should be?
yeah, 382 is the memo,
Right.
but really it gets into 384 is the cost, and then you'll begin to see the date of issues, drawings, descriptions, construction document estimates, furnishings, equipment, like it just goes through all of those items.
Did you say we're going to supply the builder's risk now?
We're going to make a change where we're going to have a rider on our general liability
So
policy.
Kaufman Lynn's not going to supply the builder's.
No,
risk?
so it's going to come out, and then there'll be some things that we'll communicate with them. Yeah.
But I think the process and everything. What we're talking about in terms of process, everything, I think today, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, it's approving. I think the builder's risk is in there, and then we'll
It is.
discuss and any alterations.
Okay, we can address it.
So-
Working-
Well, Josh and I'll deal with it
Correct. This is
afterwards.
not,
Okay,
yeah.
that's fine.
I just found about, just before I walked in myself.
Right, news to me, but
Two-
that's great.
Two
How
quick
fast we
things.
work.
I'll say actually three quick things, because the first thing, staff and Marshall's been great to work with, and I always make sure there's no money in my wallet when I walk in, because they're trying to save you every dollar. And if I have it, no, it really is a good steward of the town's money and really working. And the key thing, this is a guaranteed maximum price. Keyword on that is maximum. Any money that is saved, whether it be the contingency or anything else that comes back. And we're working to try to find creative ways and packages to constantly bring that back. It's all open book. So what we pay the subs, what we pay, there's no additional profit to be had. There's no additional things. You'll see it. You'll see how we pay the subs. You'll see how the money flows and where, and if we're able to do things and package and save money, that flows, I believe, initially. I haven't looked at the contract in full detail, but in terms of this, it'll flow into the contingency, and if not spent, then it goes back to the town. So I would fully expect, whether it's the DOP, the sales tax savings program, the creative nature we have, I would expect that number to go down. There's no promises, but it is a maximum price. Unless you come and say, you know what, we want to change this room or change that, we take that risk.
It's interesting aside. Yeah. So any savings we have goes into the
Savings come back to the
contingency
town.
fund.
Mhm.
And then anything left from the contingency fund comes, and I imagine that's at the end of the project.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
And that's why it's
Okay.
construction management at risk,
Right.
where there's a great way that your staff has done it and you authorize them to do it because it allows that to be really take the money and really open book it and say the cost is truly the cost. So let's get around the table and work as a team and not try to just, we're not trying to find any extra dollars here or there for us. We're just trying to benefit the project and we know what we're getting paid up front.
And town attorney has fully reviewed this on
Yeah.
behalf.
I have, there was a lot of negotiation back and forth. I mean, I'll just walk you through it real quick. I think Marshall did. So the price is the same. You've seen that before. In Article 1. Article 1 also fills in the gaps. I think Commissioner David raised it last time, like if we go over and there's extra time, what is it going to cost us? So 1.1.4 just talks about the wages that's included in the cost of work. 1.1.4.1 talks about if there's change orders or constructive change directives, what the markup will be. The CMAR agreement actually had a 10%. So the GMP amendment is down to 6.5%, which is another benefit for the town. The next paragraph also talks about if there's extra time, what the rate's going to be. And I believe that's what Commissioner David brought up last time. It's a 365-day project, substantial completion within 365 days, which is also the date at which the town can occupy the building. And if they don't meet that, there are liquidated damages that we also negotiated back and forth. They're pretty substantial, but I have full faith they'll finish on time. And the rest is just incorporating the exhibits.
One question.
Yes,
What does
ma'am.
substantial completion mean?
It's actually defined. I believe it's defined in the regular agreement, which I brought.
Yeah, I'll tell you why. He's finding the technical way. You have basically temporary and final. Substantial is the temporary. That means you can occupy it, start using out of it, but it's not fully closed out. It's not signed off yet, but it's your building at that time. I believe by contract, we have 2 months from the substantial to the final. And that's to finish all the things in the little.
So you're talking about a punch list.
Yeah, it's a punch list. So substantial, he was
Okay.
on the money. It's a substantial completion is the date when the project is sufficiently complete to permit the town to use it for its intended purpose.
Okay.
And we focused on that because we know your drop dead date that you have and the constraints are that it's great to know the final day it's going to be there, but it's most important to know when you can occupy it and use it because you have that urgency.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Judy, do you want to, Commissioner Dave, Peters, do you have any comments?
No, it sounds good to me. Like saving money. Definitely.
No, I have no additional comments. I'm excited for the project to get started. So do we need a motion? Okay, could we have a
Please.
motion?
I authorize the mayor to execute. Yes, it's the amendments to the
Yes.
maximum
Well, it's called the GMP amendment, though. It's an
Okay.
amendment to the original agreement.
GMP amendment to the construction manager at risk agreement between the town of Highland Beach and Kaufman Lynn Construction.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Hot dog, here we go.
On behalf of Kaufman Lynn and all 250 owners, because we are employee owned, including myself. Thank you for the trust you're placing in
Yeah,
us.
Thank you.
Thank
Look
you.
forward
Thank
to it.
you.
Okay. Next item, Florida Department of Transportation, R project update. So Commissioner Stern or Vice Mayor Stern, I keep calling you Commissioner, I should be calling you Vice Mayor, I just realized that. You want to start discussion on public forum?
Yes, I brought up, and I still think it's very important that we have an opportunity for a public forum on the FDOT. Since we have the benefit of Zoom, even if somebody is not in residence or it's out of season, we still have the opportunity for residents to voice their questions and opinions. So I feel strongly that we ought to go forward with having a public forum.
And I have a question about that. So a separate public forum, not a regular meeting, like would an agenda item on a regular meeting satisfy what you're saying, or you want to separate?
I do not have a problem with having a regular meeting and then having a public forum as part of that meeting.
So I spoke with FDOT, followed up with sharing the commission's concerns with them. And basically, for them to hold a public meeting, as we had indicated last week, they have to do a series of steps on their end administratively to coordinate, plan, secure, communicate, staff, and find a location to accommodate the volume of folks. They don't use religious facilities, so the church is not an option for them. So if we want that, they seem to be willing to do that, but our expectation should be to be 3 to 4 months for them to pull that off as quickly as they can, but it would take 3 to 4 months because they have to sign another contract, get a contractor that coordinates all their meetings, find a facility, find the date open, pay for that facility, coordinate it, communicate it, and then if we want to have any type of special AV, Zoom, something like that for those that maybe can't attend but want to watch it, but it's offsite, we have all that type of technology that has to be coordinated. So that's why he was saying it's probably 3 to 4 months for him.
Excuse me, if I may, I'd like to amend what I said earlier. If it is in fact an off-site, then it should be a special meeting other than a commission meeting.
Sure. That's the public, it's like FDOT meeting, won't be our meeting.
Yeah.
Piggybacking on the ability to have that meeting, Brad and his team can come in within a month or so and come talk to us and get more questions answered, talk to you some more, see where we go from here, things of that nature. Again, I've gotten an email. I'm glad Commissioner Peters is here, so I don't have to read his email into records. And I've spoken with each of you independently, trying to figure out what to communicate to FDOT. A lot of what the remnants of what I'm hearing is the concern over the right-of-way appearance, aesthetics, trees, vegetation, drainage. What does that look like? What does that mean? So some of the notes I got from my conversation, and I'm going to get a new attachment that I'll send out to the community that really identifies where these trees are. They evaluated 676 trees in total, all the way down the corridor, looked at them. 30 are scheduled for removal. Of those 30, he said something that a lot of them are related to the Linton widening. It's not Highland Beach, Linton. So remember, the project goes well beyond our borders too, and that also has tree removal. So, some of those trees, it's not all Highland Beach trees. The drainage work in and of itself does not result in the removal of trees. Again, the drainage work proposed does not result in the removal of any trees. The trees that have to be removed are dead, invasive, or in the impact of the road widening in some of those areas where we say 2 feet for most of it. I'll let the mayor speak to some of her attachments on impervious surface. Where you see beyond 2 feet of the expansion, what they call keyholes, is where the marked shoulder, bike facility, some want to call it a bike lane. It's a 5-foot marked shoulder. A bike lane's much bigger, but whatever, that 5-foot marked shoulder, when it comes into an approach or an entrance, if you will, for a condo, some of the condos are undersized by current design standards. So that's where you're seeing more of the addition of pavement, is at the condo entrances and exits. That's where you're seeing the expansion of some of the paving. As you look through those plans, and I went through this exercise with Commissioner Goldberg, that's what we kept on seeing, is that at the condo entrances. And the reason why is when you have a 5-foot shoulder, there's an impact. So you have to carry that through the approach and accommodate a car. So you see that slight widening of your approaches to your condos. That's why we're doing it. And then they found outside of the cross slopes that the mayor had spoke about all the way through the corridor, which is the road pitch from the crown, some of the turn lanes, a lot of the turn lanes we have are undersized because they were designed 20, 30, 40 years ago. They're not designed to current standards, so they have to be widened slightly. And that's where you queue up your car in the excel or decel lane to get to the approaches and turn. That's where you're seeing most of the additional pavement going. The straight runs, you're not seeing a lot of pavement changes, because if you go through there's not a lot of space left to expand pavement. But as you get towards the condo entrances, so those are the things that we saw. Those are things that Brad can reiterate at the meeting with you all. And he's giving me some drawings or clarifications on the landscape plans that show where those trees are, types of tree, why they're being removed. Now, doesn't get to the bushes issue. I look at the vice mayor because that was the first thing he asked me. Everybody that has bushes up against the edge of pavement, they're gone. They're not allowed to be there. We've allowed it to continue. FDOT's not, because they have to work at the edge of those are all gone. And even by our local code, you can't have them there. So that's something we as a community down the road will have to look at, but is FDOT willing to allow you to put them back in some fashion to keep people out of your front and grass and landscape areas where FedEx trucks, right? UPS, delivery, car carriers, where everybody's parking and stuff. So we have that issue. So all of those hedges that you see along the road, those are gone just because you have to repave the road. Those are gone and they're not putting them back. So those are a lot of the big items that I kind of heard. They're doing irrigation. They traditionally do not do irrigation because they don't want irrigation in the right of way, but they've come to accommodate that. So they have this really extensive irrigation program that folks, if you have irrigation in there, anything that's impacted will be fixed and repaired and returned post-construction. So you don't have to worry about carrying a $20,000 landscape irrigation bill at the end of the project. Those will all be taken care of by FDOT. You have to meet with them ahead and turn it on so they can mark everything, but those things are in the project. And again, the drainage work, again, is not resulting in any impacts to the trees. And the reason why is because we have shallow utilities. So this drainage work that they're installing, they jokingly call it the burrito, which is a geotextile. It's like a French drain, soft French drain underground. They can only go down a couple of feet because they're going to start hitting all of the water and sewer. So you can't go in AT&T, Comcast. So they're just doing the superficial drainage improvement. So they're not doing this huge, massive excavation to accommodate the drainage. It's relatively shallow. They're working on those final touches now. But again, they're working around all of our royal palms. You see out those more majestic trees and larger, they're working right around them. So they're not touching the trees. The trees will be okay. Bushes on the edges, gone. Trees are going to be okay, except for the 30 that they've identified for people have allowed it to encroach all the way up. Like it has a lot of stuff with like invasive plants, like things that have grown up on the road. People let it get too close. And some of it's on the east side too. You can see some areas where homeowners have let the vegetation just grow all the way up to the road. They're going to clear some of that back to accommodate construction. So those are my updates. They can do a public meeting. So they're willing to have it offsite, accommodate hundreds of people, advertise, facilitate. They're good, but it's going to take them 3 to 4 months. But they can come in even sooner to talk. And like I said before, they're willing to listen, but if you want any major changes or significant changes, they're going to have to work through their management side of it. And the door's open a little bit. So if we do anything, they're going to want it in writing from the commission and they're going to want a unanimous directive. I'm really skeptical of a split vote to change something carrying weight with FDOT at this point in the project to change something. If you all agree that you want something changed, they'll listen, their ears will perk up, they'll be more cooperative. If there's a mix or a conflict amongst the commission, it's going to be difficult to get them moving forward. Teresa, do we hand out those letters that we got? So I got letters assigned from Representative Gossett Seidman and Representative Caruso, and also referencing, I believe, Senator Polsky and Berman, that they'd like to see the FDOT project completed as designed. And you'll see why I think they're writing this as the mayor presents some of those communications. We've given FDOT a lot of direction over the years to build this project, for which they're building it as we asked them to. So I think that's why it's going to be difficult to make a lot of wholesale changes if we're not collectively pushing. And it appears our representatives who spent a lot of time and political capital getting FDOT to fix the drainage on their dime to change it is going to be a challenge for us. But FDOT hasn't slammed the door and said, hey, we're just doing whatever we want to do. They want to listen. They want to help. Again, the extension of Linton Turn Lane came from that August public hearing. They did not want to do that. That wasn't even on the project, but they came and heard everyone complain about the backups at Linton. Now they've done it. So I don't want people to think their voices are falling on deaf ears. FDOT's doing everything. I'm not trying to be like their advocate or anything, but they have changed the project from our communication process to date. So they are listening and making those changes, but large wholesale changes is going to take a little bit of heavy lifting on our end to convince them if that's what we want. That's for you all to communicate and discuss, and I'll help you get there and direct and do those things. But those are kind of the updates we have to date. So again, we can do public meeting. They'll come in and talk to us. You let me know what you want. I'll be here and, but again, FDOT's window is closing because they're going to let the project in the next fiscal year. So they have a process where they'll put it out on the streets, say November, award in December to construct April, May. So you start back in that timeline. If they have to change a lot on their plans, we got to do soon. And you guys have to, let us know what you want us to tell FDOT or what we want to communicate to FDOT.
Okay, so I think first we should talk about Vice Mayor Stern's item, which is the discussion on the public forum, and then we can talk about my item. So I'm in favor of having FDOT come in. I mean, I guess I would recommend that we add them to an agenda for one of our meetings, because I think that's the quickest way to get them in, and we wouldn't be off out of the city limits. We would be here. And perhaps it could be a meeting where we don't have a lot of things on the agenda, because I imagine
Lighting.
So that would be my recommendation, but I'm not opposed to having a separate meeting hosted by FDOT at another location. But I, for one, am in favor of adding it to one of the soonest that FDOT could join us at one of our regular meetings. So Commissioner David, do you want to comment?
I agree. We could have it a special meeting. Wouldn't even have to be part of a regular meeting. That's what we did last time, was they came and they spoke to us, but they were sitting on the dais, but they had a very good setup for Zoom where people could call in and ask questions in addition to the people who were here. And I think that will get them here quickest. We can let them know what we want quickest. And if we have to have another one, if it's here, we don't have to go looking for a facility.
I think Teresa was going to look to see if we can do some overflow seating into the library and set up a remote speaking location from the library. It would kind of like a Zoom, but people could feel they're collectively together as a group. So whatever we couldn't accommodate here, we could maybe have spill over in the community room. And we could, through our AV systems, tie that together and they could address at the same meeting or feeling like they lose a signal at home, we can make sure the signal's here and connected. That's we'll look at that as well.
That's a great idea.
That's great, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Great idea.
And I think the library can hold another 100 people.
Right, correct.
So with that kind of coordination and we can see after that meeting, and I think it should be done soon. After that meeting, evaluate whether another one is needed. And perhaps now the question I have is, in the interim, should we give the go-ahead sign to FDOT to make arrangements for a larger meeting? Or should that be delayed another month until we finish?
I'd say we see, we can talk about it again. We can go around again. Let's let Commissioner Peters, give him a chance. Are you finished?
Yes,
I like the mayor's and the marshal's idea. I think we can handle the overflow. It might be hard, but I think we can do it because like Marshall said, he answered a lot of my questions. People are just scared. They're thinking this project is the glass is half empty, not half full. And all they do is talk about the palms, and Marshall said they're trying to keep all the palms. And I think they're kind of scared because they don't exactly know what's happening with their landscape. And this would be I think most of the answers would be, most of the questions would be answered, I think, with that meeting.
So any comments about asking FDOT to plan for another meeting after that one?
I think that we should take one step at a time. And I think based on the results of that meeting, we can determine that.
I would agree. That's my comment as well, is let's see how it goes. And if we need to, then we'll do something, but.
I agree, but I have one suggestion, which most people are concerned about what's happening in front of their homes.
Right.
They're not quite as concerned about what's on another section of the road. So if we could have something similar to the map that they had at the last meeting, where people can focus in on where they live. And that might answer a lot of questions, and it might soothe a lot of people who, as Dawn said, are running scared.
Yes, I think that's a good idea too. Yeah, I would agree that one step at a time, as the Vice Mayor said, that's good, a good way to go, especially if we're going to be doing it in April. Is that possible?
I think it's gonna be early May, so about a month,
Okay.
about 4 weeks, because I'd want to at least give us 2 weeks to communicate it, to make sure
Sure.
we can get it out to the condos, to the
Mhm.
residents, to community groups, whoever wants to attend. Again, we would focus our communication on Highland Beach. Sorry for the Delray folks. We would turn them away, but we're not going to be worried about communicating with Delray on their piece of it. But they can always attend.
Commissioner Peters, any additional comments?
No, I think that's a great idea. I think we'll take one step and this might solve our problem. We might not need that meeting at the end.
Okay, great. So just moving on to the additional information. So I had asked staff to include in the agenda some of the historical correspondence regarding this project. And so what was included was some correspondence from the Committee to Save Highland Beach from 2019 and 2020, which highlighted a lot of the concerns that residents had regarding drainage. I also included correspondence from State Representative Peggy Gossett-Seidman, and she also submitted this additional letter along with Mike Caruso, stating their concerns about all the grand effort that has been made on the behalf of the residents in order to improve the drainage and all the entire project, really. So my understanding of these types of projects come once every 20-25 years. And what they're planning and what is within scope that the Florida Department of Transportation has put together is a result of a safety consultant, all kinds of engineers. From my understanding, what's contributing a lot to the extensive time frame is improving the slope of the road, the widening of the road to have a wider shoulders for the bike paths is a result of the safety consultant's recommendation on the road. And all of this is really because of Peggy knocking on people's doors and drawing attention. She got Senator Polsky to write letters, which Senator Polsky's letter is included in the agenda. The efforts by State Representative Mike Caruso, he used to live here, so he would drive through, but him publicly making those observations of how badly our section of A1A was flooded, and just all that, big, huge thank you to State Representative Gossett-Seidman for all the work that she's done to do this. And I just wanted to share my concern and her concern that to scale this back and to not take the recommendations by these professionals from the Florida Department of Transportation, that they do this as their main profession and have been doing it for many, many years. is really something that I don't think that we should scale back at all. And so, and there was a table that I had asked FDOT to put together, and we can share it in the future because there were concerns about the widening. It's not in the agenda, but, or at least not that I could find, but can share it later. I had asked them, what is the percentage increase in surface area of the road? So what FDOT had calculated was what the new pavement total was going to be, what the current pavement total is. So they calculated the surface area of the current road and the surface area of the proposed road with the widening. And they did it for the entire project, and they did it for the calculation for Highland Beach. So for the entire project, from the start of Highland Beach up to Linton, it's an increase of surface area of 3.75%. So less than 4% for the entire project. Oh, what?
2.76.
That's for Highland Beach. So that was for the entire project. For Highland Beach, so remember, Highland Beach is, I think the whole thing is like 3.5 miles. Highland Beach is the, 3 miles of it. So for Highland Beach, the percent increase is 2.76%. So the total is 3.75. For Highland Beach, it's less than 3%, 2.7% increase in surface area. So that means my algebra skills are put into place again. The little section that's attributed to Highland Beach, so north of the sign to Linton, that is an increase of 10%. So really the biggest increase in the pavement is on the Delray Beach portion of the road. And it's because of the widening of that left turn lane, which is from us, which is our, a comment from us. So I thought that when they shared those percentage increases with me, it's less than a 3% increase on the Highland Beach portion of the road. And we can share this in a future agenda. So I thought that was really compelling, that really the widening of the road, it's a 10% increase on the Delray Beach portion of the road. So I thought that was really good. So, Marshall is saying that there's like, a little opening to change the scope. I want us all to remember what got us here in the first place. And I really think it's important to read those old committee. They were really strong in recommending all the improvements that FDOT has now included within their scope. So I want that to be on the tip of our minds as we listen, go to the next, public meeting and talk about scope.
I think that with the small percentage and the fact that this was years of negotiation for things they didn't want to do, I think it kind of brings all the complaints into perspective, that it isn't going to hugely inconvenience when the road is finished. They are protecting and keeping as many trees as they possibly can. I mean, 30 trees out of 675 really is not a lot, particularly when you're taking out the ones that are dead and the ones that are by Linton and the ones that are invasive species. It's not an unreasonable number. I don't think this plan that they have is unreasonable. And bike riders do have an issue when there's water on the road, and that's what causes them to go into the middle of the road, and then we have conflicts between bikes and cars. So yeah, people need to keep all of that in perspective.
I was particularly taken with in looking at the history here of the scope and magnitude of what's been done, the studies, the review by the town, the states, and of course the oversight of the federal laws. I think that it certainly speaks to the long-range health and safety in Highland Beach, and the comments that I received walking our town were all they are all going to be addressed simply. It's not difficult for them to understand. And I think that we're at a point in time of all the information, all the years, all the misconceptions and misinformation, it'll all be addressed because it's coming down to just a few very specific items. As our town manager has pointed out, even insofar as the inconvenience of both lanes being closed. There was reference here that during the drainage project, that they can actually perfect it, keeping 2 lanes open. I don't know how, but maybe we have to, go into a, propel over it somehow. But I'm very impressed with this, and I think that we are going to get it done in an effective way. And in a way that is in full agreement in the town. There may be certain questions, of course, there always are. But I think more and more, as we narrow the issues and they become apparent, and they're not major issues, they're cosmetic and time, and I think they're all going to be addressed satisfactorily for the residents.
I really agree. You're still taking my hedges?
Yep. I'm telling you, I'm just being direct. Those are gone. Those are gone. They were pretty direct about that. They said the bushes are gone. I can't build a road with them there. So.
Commissioner Peters, any additional comments?
No, I agree with you, Mayor, about we've got to remember what the negotiation and everything. And I'd just like to thank Peggy and Crusoe and everybody. And I agree with Judy. I think it's just small items in that. And they have the engineers and they have the knowledge. And I would go along with FDOT on that, on the drainage and stuff. And that's it. Ready to go.
Okay, excellent. So we're going to ask them to come to.
They'll be here. They've got it early May circled, so they're coming.
Okay.
I will confirm that with you all next couple of days
Excellent.
to make those dates come to light.
Excellent. Okay, moving on to the next item under new business. Item 11A, designation of the town's voting delegates to Palm Beach County League of Cities for 2023, 2024. So we need to nominate someone.
A voting delegate and then the backup and what this means, monthly, there's a meeting. I've been a little bit light in my attendance to the Florida League of Cities, but basically it's basically city managers along with its commission going to these Florida League of Cities. You hear presentations, you have lunch. And then at the annual meeting, which we all attend in August, you're the voting member on policy directives and the like. So
I nominate Commissioner Goldberg.
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And then we have to nominate an alternate.
those eyes didn't come up.
I mean, I'm willing to do it if you don't want to,
That's fine.
Okay. I nominate Commissioner David.
I second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you both for volunteering. Or being voluntold, sorry, voluntold is probably the better. Okay, item 11B, authorize staff to initiate negotiations with the top ranked firm Waste Management of Florida in accordance with the request for proposals number 23-001 for solid waste and recycling collection services.
Back again.
Yeah.
Hi, Skander.
Hi. So we kind of have a two-part item here. The first part is initiating negotiations based on our selection committee rankings. And then the second part is going to be choosing the service model that we want to move forward with. So on March 13th, we received 2 responses for RFP 23-001 for solid waste and recycling collection services. Those were from Waste Pro and Waste Management. On March 30th, we had our selection committee meeting, and our selection committee made up of Chief Hartman, Pat Roman, and Dee Dee McCarty convened and ranked the firms. They were unanimous in ranking Waste Management first. So now we are here to certify that ranking and authorize us to initiate negotiations with Waste Management. And then the second part of that is we asked each of the proposers for 3 service models. We had one, which is standard curbside, which is essentially what we have now. The second was doorside pickup, which would be instead of rolling the can or the recycling down to the curb, a worker would go up to a specified place at the residence, bring the can down, dump it, bring it back. So people don't have to bring it down to the road. That's at applicable residences, which are outlined in the proposal. And then the third would be curbside pickup with an automated vehicle, which instead of having a 3-man crew with someone manually getting off to unload it, there's like a crane on the back of the vehicle that collects the can, dumps it, and puts it back. So what we need to do is authorize the negotiations based on our top ranked firm and then choose the service model that you guys feel most comfortable with moving forward with.
Does someone want to start with comments? First,
Well, first we're talking about now on choosing the firm. And then I have a bunch of questions and comments when, after we agree on that. I would propose that we accept the committee's recommendation to Waste Management to negotiate a contract.
Marshall, have there been any problems?
No, Waste Management's good. I mean, you do trash twice a week, recycling once, yard waste. You're gonna have some hiccups every now and again, but I think in my 5 years here, maybe gotten 1 or 2. The garbage fire was probably the one. But you fixed the pavement after, so that was okay. But otherwise not like a regular service concern.
how long have we been with Waste Management now?
It's a long time. How long, guys?
A while.
Yeah, say over 20 years.
20 years, yeah. So, yeah.
I guess one question, well, okay, so we're just talking about moving forward. So I'm in favor of moving forward. I don't know what your comments are.
I'm
You
in
guys-
favor.
I would move forward as well.
Mr. Peters, any comments?
No, I like Waste Management, and I think what we have now, I think, is the most inexpensive, I guess. Is that right, Marshall?
For the
Of
most
this-
part, unless you want to tweak it a little bit with the automated, but I know that staff and folks, when we talk about that, there are a few concerns that they feel are there that we'll have to discuss with Waste Management today. But there's a little bit of savings if we go to the automated. It really doesn't get to 90% of our customers, which are in the condos. Those rates are pretty much set in what you see here before you. That automated services is going to be for like the mayor's neighborhood, the duplexes and the quads on the side streets. That's generally where the traditional curbside that could be automated comes into play.
Yeah, I don't think
Okay.
there's enough of savings to do anything like that. I mean, I like the current service we have now.
I think when it's automated, you run the risk of having more broken garbage cans than you do if people are actually handling them.
Well, I would think some of the concerns, one is going to be the litter, because sometimes things fall out. And then I know some residents from time to time overfill and throw stuff to the side. With automated. They can't get bags of garbage and things that they kind of do now as a courtesy, since they're doing it manually. So that's kind of the.
Yeah, I wouldn't do the automated.
Yeah, I'd recommend we keep with the current process.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I agree.
Does anyone see the need to go to doorside?
Well, that was, the mayor had suggested maybe we look at that. I'm sure that if he saw saw the price that it requires, but it is a very personalized service, to come up to your garage and grab it and do all those things. But at that price, it's
Yeah, and this,
that's pretty
that would
expensive.
really only affect the single family and duplexes and the small townhouse units because they have to go into the condos anyway, so they wouldn't even be affected by that.
Can you reel it out, Natasha?
Oh, I don't need it. I mean, I think we're all used to, bringing and we'll bring our neighbors' cans in if we see them out. We don't need I don't think we need door side. So I like the service we have now. I think it works well.
And it was asked as a curiosity to see how much.
How much-
Gulfstream, you guys do
Yeah.
Gulfstream, right? They do curbside or door service, right? Yeah.
That's unnecessary in my
Okay.
opinion. Okay, so then we need a motion.
Motion to negotiate, and it says the traditional model appears to be what is preferred by the commission. And what we would do is upon your approvals, we'll sit down, myself, Len and the team, and work out a contract with Waste Management and go from there. And I think there's a few comments from the vice mayor on that, maybe on the contract.
Do you want to talk about that now or?
We have to approve
Should we
it
approve it
You
first?
could approve it first if you
Okay,
want.
so
I had a
let's-
couple comments or suggestions.
Let's make them do a motion.
I move
If I-
that we.
Sorry, if I could just jump in for a second. It says authorization to initiate negotiations, but we want to make it authorization to enter an agreement since we think the prices are finalized based on the RFP.
So then do we want to talk about it then? Is that what you?
Well,
what your
the
comments were?
agreement's going to come back before the commission anyways.
Yeah.
I mean,
So does it, you're gonna have to approve it because of the volume of the cost.
Right.
So Vice Mayor has a problem with, wants to discuss the prices. So should we talk about that before?
Okay.
I'd like to move that we approve negotiations
Okay.
with
But not lock ourselves into the price?
Yes.
Is what you're saying?
Yes.
That hopefully we can negotiate some more. Okay. And do we want to talk about, maybe we should talk about that some more. And I guess you're saying that because of the big jump in the price.
Yeah, I have a number of questions on that, and
So maybe go ahead with your question.
Sure,
It's a good time.
go ahead.
Yeah, it's a good time.
based on your numbers, the increase per year over the contract life plus the extra 2 years, what % per year increase? And how does the first year go to what we're paying now? What's the increase in the first year and each year above that?
So we're looking at a year-over-year increase of 7% per year.
Once you make the initial jump, though.
Right.
What's the initial
Yeah,
jump?
what's the initial?
How much is
The initial
jump?
104, 111%.
So it
Basically, you're
doubles.
doubling your
It
price.
doubles.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
essentially doubled. It's going from 14 and change to 27 and change, I believe.
What I would like,
And
what
what's
I would
that?
like, that being said, I would like to understand why see such a long-term contract as relates to pricing. Let's say inflation 2 years from now or 3 years from now levels off. We're still paying 7% additional every year. I find that very hard to take.
I know we based it on the previous format of 5 years with a 2-year renewal option. I don't know if we're too late in the process to go down on that, maybe do a 3-year with 2 years.
No, it's because it was an RFP, we could still negotiate the terms. That's, difference between a bid and a proposal. Proposals, you still have room to negotiate after you select the vendor.
I would like to reiterate that Waste Management was the cheaper of the two, as well as being scored higher.
Well, first of all, I don't understand the first initial size of the increase. And secondly, a fixed 7% every year for all of those years. I think that's a bad way to go. Because based on I think this is based upon what's happening today in the economy, not what might be happening a few years in the economy. And I have a real problem with that.
So the suggestion would be to look at a shorter term, the negotiation team to look potentially at a 3-year contract or
Option to
renew.
renew with
Okay.
those prices.
Okay.
We could look at that.
David, from what I understand, we in fact had a really good rate that came forward. And over the past 2 years, the prices have jumped. So the 100% is not unusual in this state. There are a lot of towns that have paid more than 100% increase. So that part, while I don't like the doubling of the money, I understand where it's coming from because this is not an anomaly. This is kind of like where insurance costs have gone.
But I have more of a problem where it's going than rather than where it's coming from.
Right, the future, I understand.
I would
It
agree.
would- Instead of asking Skender, should we have Waste Management answer some of these questions? There you go.
That's fun up,
Here.
And
Thank you.
other cities have faced, I've been through this actually with Barbara, hey, in a different city and it was. And it's funny, you talk about negotiation, we actually changed the whole price structure after the RFP because to make it more acceptable because the increases are so high. I'll let Barbara go.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners and staff. My name is Barbara Herrera, representing Waste Management Inc. of Florida, and I'm also the liaison to the beautiful town of Highland Beach, 1800 North Military Trail, Suite 201, Boca Raton, Florida. First of all, thank you very much for considering our proposal and for allowing us to be your service provider for so many years. We're very happy to be here. If you'll indulge me for 1 second, allow me to introduce my team that's here. We have Roger Sina. He is the district manager for WM of Palm Beach. Next to him is Carlos Diaz, and he is the district operations manager. And of course, he knows Highland Beach very, very well. And he works with your route manager who is not here today. His name is Mackinson Bobron. And the reason he's not here is because he's out there making sure that the garbage is getting picked up. And next to Carlos, you have Jacob Buster, and he is the senior district fleet manager also for WM of Palm Beach. So I wanted to make sure that I have my operations team here to answer any technical questions that you may have. But Vice Mayor, you asked why the increase in rates. And certainly I know that Commissioner, you touched upon the increases, which are universal. Unfortunately, we've seen it from the grocery stores to our insurance payments. But specifically for this industry and for waste management, garbage prices have been affected by predominantly labor shortages and labor costs. It's very difficult to hire, and pardon me, I have a frog in my throat. It's very difficult to hire lately skilled individuals to work on a rear load truck, which is a service that we provide here for Highland Beach. In fact, I think the average age, Roger, for rear load truck workers, it's a little bit older, correct? 40s, 50s. So when we hire new CDL drivers, commercial driver's license drivers, they tend to be younger and they don't want to be in the back of a truck. They don't want to pick up garbage and bend down and pick it up and throw it out. They want to be in an air-conditioned cab and they want to be in an automated service, et cetera. So it's very difficult for us to get these drivers. So what have we done to attract them? We've had to increase their wages and we've had to increase the benefits packages. So Waste Management, or WM as we are now known, pays, for example, pays for the college educations of our drivers, their spouses. Oh, thank you so much. Their spouses and their children. So we offer these types of benefits. Plus we offer wonderful insurance benefits, stock options, et cetera, everything to make working for WM very attractive. That has gone up. Aside from labor shortages and labor wages, we've also dealt with supply chain issues, limitations for our trucks, maintenance issues as well. Difficult to hire good maintenance people. Unfortunately, young people today are not going into the maintenance fields of large equipment. So recruiting for those fields, for those positions, again, everything has just systematically gone up. I know that Roger probably has more examples as to why the price increases, but in a nutshell, those two reasons is what's driving up wages. Other factors that go into our pricing models is, well, not only we have 3 men in a truck, how long does it take for the truck to collect garbage? What does the route look like? What does the volume look like? How long does it take for us to collect, to fill up the truck, go to the disposal facility and come back and finish the route? There are DOT limitations on how long our drivers can be on the road. So all of these factors are being taken into account when modeling our pricing. So the pricing that we give you today, we believe is very fair, certainly, but as Mr. Labadie mentioned, during negotiations, we're going to discuss everything. The draft agreement has not yet been drafted. So we'll definitely go from start to finish and ensure that we have a contract with the town that is favorable to both parties.
I have a question.
Yes.
So the recyclables, do you, are you making money off of those recyclables? Does that get factored into the pricing? Like,
No.
how does that work? Does that all work?
Thank you, Mary. Actually, that's a very, very good question. We do not process your recycling here in Palm Beach County. We only collect it. And we have to have a separate truck that has two separate compartments to collect recycling. As you know, it's for the blue and for the yellow materials. We take it over to the Solid Waste Authority, the SWA disposal facility. So we do not make money on the processing, but we do charge, or it's incorporated into our rate, the recycling collection.
So they collect it and take it to the Solid Waste Authority, and then Solid Waste Authority reimburses us for.
For
or
the
how does-
recycling, if there's a secondary
there-
market
If there
for
is a market for it.
whatever the yellow sheet drives on, corrugated, mixed glass, clear glass, all that stuff.
Okay. And-
Eventually, we could tell the county a single stream process would be a lot easier, but we haven't got there yet.
Okay. And so we are charged for the collection of it,
Right.
but we don't really, it's not part of this process, the money
We
that we
don't-
make off.
No, that comes through through, what is it? Solid Waste Authority facility. Yeah, we pay that separately, I believe.
Correct. If I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
This proposal is for the collection, as you mentioned, strictly the collection of your garbage, recycling, yard waste, and bulk material. So there are different materials that are picked up differently. Palm Beach County residents pay to Solid Waste Authority disposal in your tax rolls. So the disposal of that material is a separate charge that residents are already assessed through Solid Waste Authority. So again, these rates do not include disposal. It's only collection.
Okay. And the money, if any, that's made, how does that?
It comes back to us, but it's not,
It's minimal.
it's not a lot. I know that Susie had given me the documents, I think over the last, say 4 years, maybe we've collected 15,000 back over the last 4 years on our recycling material. So it all depends on the market. You can have a good year or a bad year, but it just, recycling markets have not been good for a while.
Right. Yeah, that was my
Right.
understanding as well. I was just curious. I wasn't sure how it was factored into this agreement. So that clarifies it to me that it's not in there. All that is included is the collection of it. Okay.
Yes, that's correct, ma'am.
Okay.
Mhm.
I have a question.
Commissioner Peters, go ahead.
What happens if the dump fees go up, the tonnage? Is that included in the 7% or is that extra?
Hello, Commissioner Peters. My name is Barbara Rivera, sir. So
Yes.
the 7% that we allotted is basically projections that we made for the next 5 years. We actually took it a step further. We took it towards 7 years. So on average, there are different indices that may be followed. There are some waste industry specific indices such as the garbage and trash, the WST, which is water, sewer, and trash. Then the index that is often most used is the CPIU. And right now, I don't have the trends right now, but they're trending, I think anywhere between 4% and 6%, depending on how it is. So we estimate a 7% because as an industry, we are of the opinion that, and hopefully we are wrong, as Vice Mayor Stern has stated, we believe that inflation is just going to go higher and higher and higher. So we had to allot for, well, what is this going to look like? What is it going to look like to successfully be able to run a sustainable operation within, we projected out 7 years because it's a 5-year term plus two-year renewal. And that is the reason why we did 7%. With that being said, during negotiations, I'm sure that's going to be discussed.
So that the dump fees are included if they go up in that 7%? That's
Pardon me, sir. So, no, to be specific to your question, any kind of disposal fee would be assessed to you through Solid Waste Authority, not through us. So again, our increase only has to do with our projection when it comes to what we believe will be impacting collection. Dump fees, like you call, or tipping fees, are disposal charges that are charged by Solid Waste Authority directly to the residents. It has nothing to do with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I agree to, with what Vice Mayor Stern is, suggesting, is to, agree to start the negotiations, but not lock ourselves into the current pricing, and, to perhaps do a shorter term. And I guess then you'll bring the results back, and then we'll discuss the results.
Yeah, it'll come back in the form of a proposed agreement for commission approval.
Marshall, do you know what the increase was under the previous contract, under the one that's just?
Barbara sent me very lovely letters, for which I thanked her, but denied the increases. So Waste Management has been asking to move the indices, and I've held them to the 3% or the CPI index that is stipulated in our long-term contract. So as Commissioner David had said, we had a pretty favorable contract over the last few years. So it's kind of where we're, looking at that. So we'll negotiate, look at them, maybe there's something, I think there's something in there. Or what, however that increase is calculated, there might be something that's a little bit more palatable, or maybe a shorter term.
Shorter term, I think
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
Sure.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Yeah, I move that we authorize to initiate negotiations with top ranked firm for RFP number 23-001, solid waste and recycling collection services.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, moving on. Any additional public comments?
Rick Greenwald, Bellito. You guys had a very busy agenda today. I'd like to just comment on two things. First, I appreciate the discussion you had about the turtles. And I think that by the end of your discussion, you'd come up with some very good ideas so that it can move forward on a very reasonable basis. The second one concerns FDOT, which I've been going to meetings pretty regularly for the last like 4 years. Getting a little tired about hearing about FDOT. I think that we really, after the negotiations through prior commissions and through help from Peggy Seidman at the state level, and also Mr. Caruso, I think that we should be at the point where we're kind of celebrating what's going to be happening rather than trying to poke too many holes in it. From a governance standpoint, I know this is largely a new commission. I agree. It's very important to let the citizens of the town have an opportunity, or many opportunities, to express themselves and ask questions and become educated and give their opinions and so on and so forth. But at some point in the process, it also becomes very important for the commission to decide what's right and then demonstrate the appropriate backbone to follow through on things. And I think we're getting pretty close to that. I mean, certainly having FDOT come in again, answer questions, et cetera. I'm all in favor of it. Again, I like people to be as educated as possible. But it also reaches a point in any decision-making process where we can't have a scattered selection of very strident voices derail something that's going to be good for the community. I think when we look at this project as proposed, most of the things that we're asking for as a community over the last 4 years, as Marshall pointed out, are in their current proposal. I mean, the resurfacing, which they proposed, the road will be sloped better. They're putting in not all the drainage improvements, but many necessary drainage improvements to get rid of the extensive puddling, not flooding, but puddling that we had. And that we had defined for us on multiple occasions. It's clearly going to make things better for the bike lanes, bike shoulders. We're not having official bike lanes, but presumably it'll eliminate where the areas where our bike shoulder goes from 4 feet wide to barely a foot wide and around bushes and so on. That can't help but be an added safety feature. So is this going to be an inconvenience and a nuisance? I'm sure it will. No question, the town will be better off at the end. As has been pointed out, the people doing this work do this for a living. So will there be inconveniences, problems with traffic? Of course there will. But I mean, this isn't their first rodeo, and I think that we have to trust that they're going to do it as smoothly for all of us as possible. So again, give people a chance to vent and a chance to learn, but at some point we need to just say thank you very much. Thanks for all the people that help us and move forward with something that's going to be an improvement to the town. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to town commission comments. Commissioner Goldberg.
No, I don't have anything to add. It was a full agenda and a lot of wonderful, very important priorities are addressed. So that's that leaves a very good feeling that this commission is moving forward and acting responsibly. It's heartening. Great.
Commissioner Peters.
I agree with Judy. I think it was a busy, like Barry said, busy agenda. And I think this next meeting with FDOT and the public meeting, I think this is going to solve most of the problems, and people are going to be informed a little bit more. Thank you.
Commissioner David.
No additional comments.
Vice Mayor Stern.
I would agree. I've got a request. With all of the updating and so forth and signing and so forth, could we get a price what it would cost to update this sign to the sign that we have in our
I do. I found a vendor happened to reach out that does plaques and monuments, and
Great idea.
we can get one that's our current logo. Yeah.
Great idea. I know you don't even see it anymore as like such a fixture, right? Good idea. Yeah,
Yes.
very nice. Good idea.
Thank you. That's all I have.
I just want to say congratulations to Barry Donaldson to having the winning sign. I'm really excited about that and moving forward. So town attorney, any?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Town manager?
Just a brief performance recognition for Sergeant Shursty and Officer Cataldo. Recently, we're in a situation with a resident that had a knife and threatened herself and her family. Nick and Paul did a really good job of controlling the situation, calming it, putting that person into a position to relax, release, relinquish safely without any injuries. And I just wanted to give kudos to those two for their hard work and commitment to the town and responding appropriately into what could have been a very ugly situation. So just want to let you know our officers are continuing to do the hard work in town, and we appreciate their effort.
Absolutely. Okay, well, with that, at 3:55, let's adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Wow.